Hi, my name is Nyasha. I'm an investment analyst, and back in May, I submit my resignation at the Bank of England. And with the Bank of England's graduate schemes open, I thought it would be a really good opportunity for me to tell you about my experiences and give you advice on your application. So the way this video is going to work is that I'm going to tell you about the Bank of England graduate scheme. I'm then going to tell you 3 things that I liked about the graduate scheme and 3 things I didn't like as much about my time there. And hopefully that should give you a good view on the experience, the institution from a perspective of a graduate. And also, I'm then going to give you some tips and advice on how to do your own application. I just want to put a disclaimer out there and say that this video was not commissioned to me, so I'm just speaking from my honest experiences and I hope it's helpful. Obviously, I advise that you do your own research, and remember, with careers, it's about you. It's about what you want to achieve in your lifetime. It's about your own goals, and it's about how you want to grow and develop as a person. Perfect. So in terms of length, the Bank of England graduate scheme is 2 years long. I think that's pretty standard for most UK finance-based graduate schemes, and I think it's a good length for a graduate scheme as well. The first 12 months, they really want you to have a good understanding of the scope of the institution, and then the final 12 months, you then have an opportunity to start a qualification, which can be at the master's level. So that's what they say on their website. What do I actually think myself? I think that the graduate scheme, in terms of that sort of structure, I think it's quite good. I will say though, in that, at least in my year, it was a non-rotational graduate scheme, meaning that the area that you end up working in is the area you're going to be working in for the first 2 years of your career. That can be a double-edged sword, because the thing is that you're probably not going to fully understand what all the different areas of the Bank of England does. There is a lot of information on their websites, but at the same time, just because there's only one Bank of England and there aren't really, private sector institutions that do the exact same thing, there's going to be certain roles that will exist in the bank that don't exist in private sector and vice versa. So safe to say, if you're in an area that you don't really enjoy being a part of, or maybe perhaps it doesn't align up with where you want to go in your career, that can be an issue for you since you're going to be spending the majority of your time on the graduate scheme there. In my personal experience, the area that I was placed in, which was called Financial Stability, Strategy and Risk, it wasn't an area I was familiar with, but at the same time, it was really good for my career. I really enjoyed myself there. I had plenty of opportunities to grow and develop. I was part of really interesting work, which I'll discuss later. So, take that as you may. It can be really good to stay in the same place. So I'm not trying to say that a non-rotational graduate scheme is worse, simply because you can develop a lot of expertise by being in the same area for a longer amount of time. But at the same time, some people, they would prefer to, try different things. Nevertheless, there's plenty of opportunities whilst you're on the first 12 months of a graduate scheme to get to know different areas, to network with people across the institution. And so honestly, I don't think it's too much of a problem. You just should make sure that when you're going to apply, you reach out to people on LinkedIn about the areas you're interested in and get their perspective. So let's kick off with 3 things that I really enjoyed about my time at the Bank of England. The very first one, I would have to say, it's the people. The people who I worked with were fantastic. I really have to give a shout out to my line manager as well as my senior manager. So in particular, I'm saying that the person who managed me and the person who managed my team were very amazing people. They made sure that I had plenty of opportunities to grow, to develop. They made sure that I had access to specific training opportunities that were really good for me. They really took time to understand me as a person and how I work. And that's really essential for the first 2 years of your career. My line manager in particular, bruh, this woman was on job. She was just on top of everything. And of course, she has her own work to do as well, but at the same time, she gave a lot of specific attention to me to make sure and check in with me on how I'm finding tasks, to make sure that I'm, not staying stagnant or falling below certain expectations. Even though I left my job, I still carry a lot of the way that I was trained at the Bank of England in my current role, in the way that I conduct myself, in the way that I communicate with colleagues and everything. So for me, I'm really grateful for the people that I worked with on my team. And then not just my team as well, just the broader directorate I was a part of, really, really fantastic. Some very important people in central banking worked within my directorate, and it was such a friendly, nice place to be in. I remember when I submitted my resignation, at some point I had an exit interview about my area. I had absolutely nothing negative to say. So if you're interested in FSSR, they have a shining endorsement from me. The second thing I really liked about working at the Bank of England is that I was really empowered to work on very important projects and take on a lot of responsibility. So of course, when you're working in the UK's central bank, you're obviously going to be given important tasks. I myself, I was a policy analyst in the banking stress testing and resilience division. So that's the area that's concerned with the major UK banks, and we conduct most of our analysis on UK banks. The most important project that I was a part of is the process that the Bank of England refers to as stress testing, which is where they basically take a look at the UK financial sector and make analysis to determine if it would be resilient in like a very bad case it hits the fan sort of scenario. So actually, ever since I've left, every now and then I've been refreshing the Bank of England's website to just see if there's any more information about when it's published. In fact, yeah, everything on Google is just saying to me around end of 2024. So I'm not going to say any more on it because stress testing is a secretive process. But yeah, it was very interesting for me. And then number 3, finally, and something that was very important for me, I felt like there was a lot of investment into my career. Working at the Bank of England was my first job out of university. I'd had prior internship experiences, but an internship is never going to be the same thing as doing an actual full-time role. I felt like it was a difficult transition for me because when you're now working in an institution, you have to consider, understanding what your team does. That takes some time. Understanding the broader importance of the specific work that you're doing. Understanding how your own performance is measured. It's a lot to think about. And I felt that my managers, once again, coming back to the fact I was really grateful for the people I worked with, my managers as well as my colleagues all did a lot to support my development. Because here's the thing, right? It's not a profit making bank. So in private sector organizations, sometimes in the culture, people are competing against each other. You know what I mean? In the Bank of England, it's not like that. Everybody is generally working in a very collaborative manner, in a way that's really conducive to teamwork, working closely together, and I felt that within my team as well as in my division. So since I like to be an honest and open person, I'm going to now go through the 3 things which I would say I didn't enjoy about my time working at the Bank of England. This is probably the part where if anybody at the Bank of England is watching, their eyebrow is raised like, okay, let's see what he says. So the first thing I would say is that it is a very slow-moving institution in a sense, but nothing out of the ordinary. Because the thing is that public sector jobs typically have that sort of idea of they're not as agile, they're not as fast-paced, that kind of thing compared to their private sector counterparts. And to be honest, I could see that to a degree. Don't get me wrong, people in that institution, there are so many incredibly talented, incredibly brilliant, incredibly intelligent people who I worked alongside. And everybody was always putting in a lot of work within my area. But the thing is, when you have a 2,000, at least 2,000 people, I'm pretty sure, in an organization, that's so many teams. Even when you're doing collaboration across different teams, sometimes it just felt like there were just unnecessary barriers to, just being able to reach the end point of a project. Especially when you consider as well that the culture across teams varies a lot. So obviously I had a very shining recommendation for my area, FSSR. However, I can only speak for my experience there in FSSR. I've had friends in the organization across so many different areas, and when we'd exchange stories, almost every area felt like almost like a completely different place. Some better than others, some not as great as others. The second negative about working at the Bank of England as a graduate, I would say, is the restrictions on that Bank of England staff members have. Now, I do want to point out that I definitely do understand why these rules are in place. And in fact, I respect the level of integrity that working at the Bank of England demands from someone. You know, like various obvious things, such as if you're working in a position where you're helping to regulate some sort of financial institution, you absolutely cannot invest in any like stocks and shares of that institution, you know, things like that. But at the same time, certain blanket rules like not being able to have a limited company under your name, which again, it makes sense when you think about it, but it's like whether you could sell cookies on Etsy, for example, and you would not be allowed to register that as a company whilst working at the bank. And then, more relevant to me as well, I was restricted in what I could do in terms of social media. Obviously, I'm a micro influencer, and I can say in the time that I was working at the bank, I had been reached out to regarding brand deals. And when I looked into what those companies do, as soon as I saw that they did work in financial services or selling financial products, I would say, no, I can't take this because that would represent a conflict of interest with my role. And then furthermore, honestly, I won't repeat all the rules to you, but the rules essentially boil down to don't come and embarrass us. I mean, honestly, who knows? Even though I've resigned, I might be getting one fat cease and desist in my Gmail inbox by the time this video is uploaded. Fingers crossed, no. The final thing that I would say can be a negative about working at the Bank of England as a graduate is the salary. Now, if you're a very profit-motivated individual finishing university, I mean, I couldn't blame you in this time and economy, and you qualify to work at the Bank of England, there's a strong chance that you could qualify to work in another graduate role that would pay you more. So whilst I would say it's in the time since I joined, it seems that salaries for graduates did improve. At the same time, I would say that it can be challenging for people, especially if they move into London to take the role. Now, fortunately, the Bank of England is opening a hub in Leeds, and plenty of the graduate roles that are available for London are equally available in Leeds as well. So for some people, that might be better since that's an area with a much lower cost of living. So overall, with my pros and cons for working at the Bank of England, I do want to emphasize that they're individual and personal to me. So you might not have the same positive or negative experiences in terms of working in the institution. Overall, would I recommend people start their career at the Bank of England? Well, I can say yes, in the sense that it worked out fantastic for me. Even though I'm in a different line of work now, I'm incredibly grateful for the start I had in the institution. It was a journey that literally began for me when I was 18 years old. So for those of you who are still watching this video and interested in knowing about applying for the Bank of England, I'm now going to give you some advice for the graduate applications. My first piece of advice is that you should be very familiar with the Bank of England's mission as well as their core functions. The Bank of England is there to promote the good of the UK people above everything else, and you should understand that even if you haven't had internship experience there, you can definitely still apply. In fact, I'll give you an example for how your experiences in something else can be incredibly relevant for doing a graduate role in the Bank of England. When I was 18 years old, I did a 1-week work experience in a job center, and when I made an application to the Bank of England when I was 18, I actually did mention an answer based on that. Because essentially, while some people might say, what does working in a job center have to do with the Bank of England? No, I understood that it was incredibly relevant. I was working in a public institution, so already I understood what it's like to work in a role where your main concern is the well-being of people. And then on top of that, obviously working in a job center, you're handling people's data, which is sensitive information. You need to act with integrity, with empathy when working with people. So of course, if you don't have the exact financial experience, don't discount yourself. I worked with plenty of people at the Bank of England and met plenty of people on my graduate scheme who had different educational backgrounds to me. Someone who studied economics in a Russell Group University. Secondly, I would say you should like this video, you should follow me and ask any comments if necessary. I'm going to be posting application advice on my LinkedIn, so if you're not already following me or connected with me on LinkedIn, make sure to do that as well. Also, I would suggest that if you find an area of the Bank of England you're interested in, you can go onto LinkedIn, you can search people who work at the Bank of England in that area, and I recommend you find someone who's a graduate, so somebody who on their LinkedIn it says they've been working there within, say, the past 2 years, and that was their first experience after university. They'll be much better able to tell you about their area than I am, since I only worked in one specific area for the duration of my graduate scheme. Overall, I hope you found this video helpful. Make sure you check the links in the bio for more careers resources. And if you enjoyed that, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.